This documentary is made in such a way that every father and mother could watch along with their daughter and son together. We made around 100 documentaries till now from Project Shivoham, and this one is the most essential of all what we have produced so far. Let's get started. Around May 2022, that's last year, I produced 3 documentaries of the same topic, the origins of Jnanavapi. It was made in Hindi, Telugu, English, all 3 languages. And the essence of this documentary is to bring forward the most authentic available source of Jnanavapi, which is Skanda Puranam. Based on this ancient authentic scripture, I produced the complete history of Jnanavapi in 3 languages, and more than 1 million of you watched. But unfortunately, during the same time, there were absolutely disgusting remarks made about Shiva Lingam by other side of the table from other religions or political parties who made downright disgusting remarks about Shiva Lingam. And these disgusting remarks were the precursor to the unfortunate event of what the consequences Nipur Sharma has been facing today. For the last 1.5 years, I have been contemplating within myself, really skeptical, should I bring forward a documentary bringing out the real meaning of Shiva Lingam, yes or no? For whatever reason, I could not move forward for 1.5 years, but finally I decided to make it. And this video is going to be extremely detailed about Shiva Lingam, and definitely a long one. So people who don't have patience to watch long videos, I think that's not for you. But for those of you who are majority of my respected viewers, here it is: sex and Shiva Lingam. Let's get started. So for this documentary, let's follow our traditional template. Let's cut this into 3 parts. The first one, we need to understand certain extremely important words. These are just Sanskritam words, and if we don't understand the meaning of these words, we just cannot understand what is a Shiva Lingam, period. And in the second chapter, let us try to understand the sexual connotation of Shiva Lingam. I don't want to say anything about this chapter because chapter 1 is a prerequisite to talk anything about chapter 2. And finally, in chapter number 3, let's try to understand the architecture of Shiva Lingam. Why a Shiva Lingam is built the way it is. What is the significance of it? And what does the ancient scriptures say about it? And everything more. Let's get started with chapter 1. Certain extremely important words about Shiva Lingam. Our interest is just 3 words. 3 extremely important words, starting with the first one, Lingam. It means a male genital organ. Second one, Yoni. It means a female genital organ. Third and the last word is Digambara, which means nude. These are the 3 words and their respective meanings what most of us are familiar with. It is nothing wrong in it, but at the same time, it is not complete either. So let us try to understand the real meaning of, or rather the complete meaning of these 3 words, Lingam, Yoni and Digambara, one by one quickly. To understand the complete meaning of this word Lingam, we need to refer Linga Puranam, a conversation between Suta Maharshi and his Sishyas. This is a very interesting conversation where Suta Maharshi explains the genesis of creation, how creation happened. And this is what he says. Alingo linga moolam tu avyaktam linga muchyate alingaha shiva ityukto lingam shaivamiti smrutam. The translation is, the non-characterized is the root of the characterized. The Prakriti is the characterized while Shiva is the non-characterized. Absolutely sounds like a tongue twister, and that is the reason. Let me explain this with a small example. Take a sprouted plant and as well consider its earlier form when it was in the form of a seed. Now the seed is the cause and the plant is the effect, besides various other causes like water, sunlight, etc. The seed is not green in color, but the green color of the plant is because of the quality that is inherently hidden in the seed. To simply put, we humans can always understand the effect, and to trace the cause, it is only through effect we run backwards to identify the cause. As long as the cause is just in its own state, we cannot visualize the effect. Imagine that there is no plant on this earth. All you have is a bunch of seeds. Until and unless that very first seed which sprouts into a plant happens, none of us are aware of the fact that there is a plant hidden in the seed. So we humans always understand the effect, and from the effect we try to trace back the cause. After all, the nature, cosmos, universe, you name it, everything around us is a complex web of cause and effect. Now this effect is called as lingam and the cause is called as alingam. So here our main interest is the meaning of the word lingam. Lingam means a manifested effect. The second word we want to understand is yoni. Besides female genital organ, there is another very deep meaning about this word yoni. For that, we have to refer to Bhagavad Gita. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadamyaham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayah sambhavanti yaha tasam brahma mahad yoniraham bija pradah pita. These are the words of Bhagavan Sri Krishna to Arjuna. And the first two words, if you see, Mama yonir, it means my yoni. What was Sri Krishna referring to? The translation, if you see here, is yoni is a place of birth. It is a place where life sprouts. It is a place where the genesis of life happens. It is not just a female genital organ. If you read the translation of what he just said in these slokas, the total material substance, Prakriti, is in my womb. The entirety of this nature is in my womb. I impregnate it with the individual souls, thus all living beings are born. Arjuna, for all species of life that are produced, the material nature is the womb, which is the Prakriti is the womb, and I am the father who gives the seed to germinate life in this Prakriti. These are the words of Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the lines above. So what's important for us to understand is yoni means a place where life originates. Third and the last word we want to understand is Digambara. Digambaraya divyaya divyarupa dharaya cha sadoddita parabrahma dattatreya namostute. This is a dhyana slokam for Bhagavan Dattatreya. And the first word you see here, he is revered as a Digambara. Digambara is a Vyanjana Sandhi. In Sanskritam, two words can fuse to create a new word. So the word Digambara is a fusion of two different words, Dik plus Ambara. Dik means directions, Ambara means clothing. A spiritual yogi who is in the highest form of his ecstasy, who does not identify himself or herself with the own body, rather considers themselves as an integral part or a continuum of the nature. They do not put their clothing on. For common people like us, it sounds absolutely weird, but what I would recommend is try to understand the sacred Digambara tradition of Jainism. Then you will understand the significance of the word Digambara. But in our context, all we need is just a meaning of it. So Digambara does not translate to nude. There are other words in Sanskritam which can explain that. When a word Digambara is used for any person, it inherently means that that person is a yogi who is in the highest level of spiritual ecstasy, who wears the four cardinal directions itself as his clothing. To understand this little better, imagine that a baby in a mother's womb. Now you cannot call that baby as nude. The baby is an integral part of the body of the mother. So the aspect of being nude does not even apply to a baby in the womb. Just like that, a yogi in the nature is like a baby in the womb of the nature, wearing all four cardinal directions as his clothing. That is the meaning of the word Digambara. So let's quickly wrap up the three words, starting with the first one, Lingam. It means a manifested effect, and also it means a male genital organ. Same way, the second word, Yoni, it means a female genital organ, and also it means the source of life. And the third word is Digambara. It means a yogi without bodily consciousness and who is in the state of highest spiritual ecstasy. And it also means nude. These are the 6 meanings that are relevant for us in the next couple of minutes. And that's the end of chapter 1. And now let's get to chapter 2, the crux of the entire video, sexual connotation of Shiva Lingam. If we want to understand the significance of Shiva Lingam, the place where we need to go is Shiva Puranam Kotirudra Samhita, 12th Adhyaya. Suta Maharshi is asked a question by his Sishyas about why Shiva is worshipped in the form of a lingam. Is there any specific reason behind this tradition? And from then on, Suta Maharshi answers his Sishyas as to why or when this tradition of worshipping Shiva in the form of a lingam started. And the narration of Suta Maharshi spans across multiple chapters, and it's a very lengthy answer. And to accommodate, let me set the context already for this. So once upon a time, there was a forest called Daruvana. In this forest, there were some rishis along with their families leading a humble hermitage life. And all these rishis are a very ardent devotees of Shiva. This is the context. I brought up the most important slokas and also even made it in bold the words that you need to observe very closely. Etat simamtare sakshat shankaro nila lohitah virupam cha samasthaya parikshardham samagatah. Shiva, assuming a very hideous form, came to the rishis living with their wives in the Daruvana in order to test their devotion. Parikshardham samagatah. Digambaroti tejasvi bhuti bhushana bhushitaha sachestam akaroda drustam haste lingam vidharayan. And the translation is, Shiva was in the form of a Digambara, which means, yes, let's not shy away from it, he was nude. I repeat the words, Shiva was nude. But the Sanskritam word Digambara has a lot bigger connotation. Like we just saw, a Digambara means a yogi who is in the highest state of spiritual ecstasy. So Shiva was in the form of a Digambara with vibhuti smeared all over his body and held his genital organ with his hand and gave a very weird demeanor. Haste lingam vidharayan. Haste means hand, lingam means the genital organ, vidharayan means to hold. If you say it is weird, I would say it is not. Because no matter in which part of Bharat you go to a Shivalayam, you will definitely hear these words. Nagendra haraya trilochanaya bhasmangaragaya maheshwaraya nityaya suddhaya digambaraya tasmai nakaraya namah shivaya. Nityaya suddhaya digambaraya. He is revered as a Digambara. And again I repeat, the word Digambara has a very deep spiritual connotation. So there's nothing weird about it. But he gave a very weird demeanor of holding his lingam or the genital organ with his hand in front of the rishis and their wives when everyone was around. It was obviously very odd behavior and he wanted to test their reaction under those circumstances. And looking at this extremely weird behavior and not recognizing that the Digambara who is in front of them was Shiva himself, the rishis cursed the Digambara yogi that his genital organ would fall down. Going with the first slokam, Ityukto tu tada taischa lingam cha patitam kshanat avadhutasya tasyashu shivasyad bhuta rupinaha. And the translation is, the rishis cursed the Avadhuta, who is Shiva himself, that may his genital organ or the lingam fall down instantly. Here the word Avadhuta is used, and in the previous slokam it is used as Digambara. These two words are more or less interchangeable. They essentially represent a yogi who is in the highest state of spiritual ecstasy. Avadhuta and Digambara. So moving to the second slokam. Tatstvadiyam tatlingam patatam prudhivi tale yatra yatra cha tadyati tatra tatra daheptunaha. The lingam or the genital organ of the Avadhuta or Digambara or Shiva, as per the curse of the rishis. So the genital organ of Shiva fell down onto the earth and started radiating Agni, burning everything around. Then the rishis realized that Avadhuta is none other than Shiva himself. On one hand, realizing that the Avadhuta is Shiva himself, and on the other hand, the absolute devastation that the lingam is causing by spilling out Agni. In a helpless state, the rishis pray to Ma Parvati. All the rishis seek refuge in Ma Parvati and begs her to help them contain the absolute devastation that the lingam is causing by burning everything around. Girijam yoni rupam cha barnam sthapaya shubham punaha tatra lingam cha tatstapayam punaschayvabhimatrayet. And the translation is, Ma Parvati took manifestation in two different forms. One is in the form of a female genital organ or a yoni, and the second one is in the form of a barnam or arrow. So she took two forms. One is a yoni and second one is a barnam or an arrow, and embraced the fire emanating Shiva Lingam, thus stabilizing the lingam. Our understanding of Shiva Lingam is a monolith, but it is not. Basically, the pedestal part of the Shiva Lingam is called as yoni, and the upward part of the Shiva Lingam is called as lingam. It is two different parts. The upward part of the Shiva Lingam represents Shiva, and undeniably, as per Shiva Mahapuranam, this part of lingam is nothing but the male genital organ of Shiva himself. And the bottom part, which is called as yoni, is the female genital organ of Ma Parvati. So getting back to our context. So as soon as Ma Parvati completely controlled the Shiva Lingam, that union of lingam and yoni manifested in the form of first Shiva Lingam as we know today. And as soon as it happened, these are the words of all the rishis around that Shiva Lingam. Jagadadir jagadyonir jagadam targatopicha shanto bhava mahesham sarvam lokamscha palaya. The rishis called the Shiva Lingam with three distinctive words. Jagadadir, Jagadyonir Jagadantargata. Jagadadi means the start of the universe. Shivalingam represents the start of the universe. Jagad Yoni means the source of life in the universe. Shivalingam also represents the source of life in the universe. And third one, Jagadamtargata, which means what is in you as an individual, or me as an individual. What is present in every life form, that internal aspect, that prana shakti. Shivalingam reflects that. These are the words used to describe or define a Shivalingam. Look, Shivalingam has a very deep philosophical and spiritual context. It's not a problem if you don't understand it. But the point is, there are certain perverted religious ideological groups which absolutely throw disgusting remarks. No one expects them to worship Shivalingam, or at the very least understand the philosophy of Shivalingam. That's not the point. At the very least, a civilized human being would never denigrate the sacred beliefs of the other person. Well, that demonstrates the uncivilized, insecure and perverted mindsets of certain religious and political ideological groups. I rest my case. This is a very ancient Shivalingam. It's approximately 1200 to 1400 years old. And let me show you the actual parts of the Shivalingam as defined in Shiva Mahapuranam. So this is the lingam representing the male genital organ of Bhagavan Shiva, and this part is the yoni representing Ma Parvati, and this part, these lines, is the Banam, the second manifestation that she took as per the slokam. She took two manifestations. One is in the form of a yoni, second one was in the form of a Banam or an arrow. So these are the three essential parts of a Shivalingam. This is what will make a Shivalingam complete. If you have a Shivalingam just with lingam and yoni but without this Banam, then it is not complete. I am not saying this. We will see which scripture says that. That brings us to the last leg of this documentary, the chapter number 3, which is the architecture of Shivalingam. This is one of the oldest dated Shivalingam, called as Mukhalingam, with 5 faces of Lord Shiva carved on all the 4 cardinal directions and one on the above. It is on display in Lucknow State Museum as we speak. And this Shivalingam was dated approximately 2100 to 2300 years old. This is another and one of the oldest Shivalingas across Bharat. It is present in Gudimallam, and Shiva here is revered as Parshurameswara, and this Shivalingam is 2300 years old. And unmistakably, the structure of this Shivalingam very much represents a phallic shape. That's the shape of a genital organ. As defined in Shiva Mahapuranam, the yoni, lingam and banam, all three are intricately carved into the Shivalingam. Of course, this Shivalingam is revered as a Swayambhu, but you know what I mean. Shivalingam is always revered as a union of Prakriti and Purusha, Shiva and Parvati, the primordial masculine force and the primordial feminine force of life. Hence this structure. Before consecration or the Pratishtha, this is how any Shivalingam would look like. The yoni part is separate and the lingam part is separate. And the union of these two is consecrated with Vedic rituals, and that essentially is called as Prana Pratishtha. Now the topic of our interest is, where is the architecture of this Shivalingam coming from? What are the instructions in architecting a Shivalingam? What is the basis? What is the scriptural basis? Philosophically, yes, we saw Shiva Mahapuranam, Linga Puranam, Yajurvedam, all these mention the philosophical aspect of Shivalingam. But the physical aspect of it, where does that come from? Let's try to understand. It is the Agama Shastras. Agama Shastras are like the guidelines of how a temple need to be constructed, how the murti need to be consecrated, what kind of rituals need to be organized in a temple, depending on the form of the energy that is consecrated. There are 28 Shaiva Agama Shastras, and every Shivalayam across Bharat over thousands of years is completely governed by Agama Shastras. Of these 28 Agama Shastras, 3 Shaiva Agamas are very important. One is Kamika Agama, second one Karanam Agama, third one is Makuta Agama. These are the 3 Agama Shastras which will tell clearly to the point as to how a Shivalingam need to be architected, especially Kamika Agama. This is the most important scripture according to which any Shivalingam would be carved. The 2 examples of the 2 Shivalingas that I gave, which are like more than 2300 years old, they are called as Mukhalingas, a linga which has the face of Shiva engraved on it. And this is one of the form of Shivalingas elaborated in Kamika Agama. Now imagine the antiquity of Kamika Agama definitely it should be more than 2300 years old. And Agama Shastras are subservient to Vedas. So if Agama Shastra itself is 2300 years old or even older, think about the antiquity of the Vedas. Anyway, coming back. So basically, these are the master scriptures based on which a Shivalingam would be carved. According to Kamika Agama, a Shivalingam can be made in 6 different ways. First one is Mrinmaya, which means made out of earthen cast. A Shivalingam can be made with metals, it's called as Lohaja, and there are 8 metals defined in Kamika Agama: gold, silver, copper, bronze, brass, iron, lead and tin. These are the 8 metals using which a Shivalingam can be casted. Then comes the third way of making a Shivalingam out of precious gems, and it is called as Ratnaja, and there are 7 types of precious gems given in Kamika Agama like emerald, pearl, sapphire, topaz, etc. And then there is another way of crafting a Shivalingam, that is Daruja, made from wood. And here as well there are 8 different kinds of wood that is precisely defined in Kamika Agama. We'll not get into that, but you get the point. And then comes Shailaja, which means a Shivalingam made out of rock. And the last one, the 6th one, is Kshanika Lingas. So Kshanika Linga is made with couple of materials like sand or cow dung or boiled rice. So they are meant for only that specific ritual, and after that there will be a visarjan of the lingam into the water. So these are the materials using which a Shivalingam can be crafted according to Agama Shastras. And it is not just about the physical materials, every material has a significance behind that. For example, gold is used for making a Shivalingam, and to worship that form of a golden Shivalingam if one aspires for absolute sovereignty and power. Maybe kings in the past used to have golden Shivalingas owing to the desire on sovereignty and power. So like that, each Shivalingam has a very significant spiritual connotation attached to it, and depending on that, the material would be chosen for crafting a Shivalingam as per Agama Shastras. Remember the manifestation of Ma Parvati as a Banam or an arrow? The name of that arrow is Brahma Sutram. A Brahma Sutram is a geometrically proportional and vertical arrow-like lines representing the feminine source of life. The manifestation of Parvati in the form of arrow, hence called Brahma Sutram. So what I mean by geometrically proportional is the length of these lines, the curvature, everything is a function of the dimensions of lingam. What given in Agama Shastras, a translated version in English, the complete algorithm, the step-by-step approach of how to draw a Brahma Sutram is given here in English. We'll not go into all that, but just look at the amount of geometry and mathematics that goes into crafting the Brahma Sutram. It is a very essential part of Shivalingam, and without Brahma Sutram, a Shivalingam is incomplete. That's what the Agama Shastras say. Like this, it goes on. The Agama Shastras talk about the dimensions of a lingam, the design of the yoni, the curvature of the lingam, prana pratishtha, Vedic rituals to the lingam, the architecture of the temple, the engineering principles of constructing such huge structures, and a lot more. So that's the essence of this documentary, Sex and Shivalingam. We saw the first chapter with certain extremely important words, the second part is on the sexual connotation of Shivalingam, and the third one is about the architecture of Shivalingam. Till now, I did not say a single word of my opinion. It is completely based on authentic sources, and I just presented the facts the way they are. Now I want to give you a very important takeaway. A simple and straight question. Why do you shy away from the truth of Shivalingam? If you are not aware of the philosophy behind Shivalingam, there's nothing wrong about it. But the point is, once we understand the fact about Shivalingam, it essentially represents the primordial father and primordial mother of this entire creation. Jagatah Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameswarau. That is the essence of Shivalingam. Imagine you see a mother nursing her child, breastfeeding her milk to a child. How do you look at it? It's quite a respectable thing. Nobody in their right mind would look at her with a perverted approach. That's exactly what Shivalingam is also representing. Let me put it in very simple words. If you don't teach your children the right way, there is somebody else waiting on the other side of the table to mislead them into the wrong way. Not everyone from the other side of the table are like that, but you understand the point. Denigrating and disrespecting Shivalingam is one of the prime tactic in the malicious religious conversions. I can easily make you ashamed of your own culture when you don't even know what's your culture. It's as simple as that. And on the other side, the reason I emphasized so much on the Sanskritam words at the beginning is the meaning of yoni and the meaning of lingam. Once we start looking at things with a much more broader perspective, the sexual assaults on women or men will not be the way they are today. If the word yoni only gives me the view of a female genital organ, versus if a yoni gives me a view that it is the source of life, it's the source of creation, it will be treated with a lot of respect and reverence. And this is the culture of Bharat. I can go on this topic, but you get the point. So let's move on. Let me close this documentary with an important and final remark. Somaskanda Murti. It is a manifestation of Shiva, Parvati and Subramanya, all three together. Somaskanda Murti was worshipped in Tamil Nadu and parts of southern Andhra Pradesh, approximately more than 1,000 years from now. The little boy between Shiva and Parvati is Kartikeya, and in this manifestation he is revered as Skanda. Skanda ityan bruvan devah skannam garbha parisravat. Maharshi Vishwamitra narrates to Bhagavan Sri Ram as to why Skanda is the name of Kartikeya. Kartikeya was called Skanda as he was born out of the skalana of the semen of Shiva. The word skalana means the process of the semen entering from Shiva into Parvati. Hence, he was called as Skanda. I don't have to explain it further, but you know what I'm trying to say. Understand the sanctity of Shiva Lingam and what is the level of reverence of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine in the culture of Bharat. And again repeat, if you don't teach your children the right way, there is someone else who's ready to teach it in the wrong way. And that is the reason I've been making these documentaries. The deep philosophy behind Shiva Lingam can be just summarized with these 4 lines from Linga Puranam. Alingo linga moolam tu avyaktam linga muchyate. Alingah Shiva ityukto lingam shaivamiti smrutam. Agunam dhruvamaksham alingah Shiva lakshanam. Gandha varna rasauryuktam shabda sparshadi lakshanam. The non-characterized is the root of the characterized. The Prakriti is the characterized, and while Shiva is the non-characterized. The non-characterized Shiva is devoid of smell, color, taste, sound and touch. And on the contrary, the smell, color, taste, sound and touch are infused into Prakriti, thus making it characterized. The bottom line is, Shiva Lingam is a manifestation of the union of Lingam, which is the cause, and Yoni, which is the effect. Jagatah Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameswara. And as always, thanks for watching.